Okay, it's recording now. Okay.
Alright, I'm David Groves, and we're going to talk about saving lives in Africa and the AIDS epidemic. Let's start off by looking at some statistics. In 2009, 33 million people worldwide were living with the AIDS or HIV virus. Since 1981, more than 25 million people have died of AIDS, and there were 1.8 million deaths in 2009. Most of the HIV and AIDS infections are in Africa, but it is not a continental or even a national issue. It is a human issue that affects all of us. So what can be done to stop this life-threatening virus? Unfortunately, there is no easy answer, but there are several proven techniques that will help. Today I'll start by telling you about what the AIDS and HIV virus is. Then I'll talk about the ABC program that was used in Uganda to help stop the spread of AIDS and HIV there. And finally, I'll conclude with what we can do to take a stand on these issues. So before we understand how to stop it, we must first understand what the virus is. Dale Hansen Bork's book, The Skeptic's Guide to the Global AIDS Crisis, says that HIV is it stands for human immunodeficiency virus, and basically this is something that will attack your immune system and it makes it susceptible to other diseases that are normally not serious. Once one of these diseases catches on, the person is said to have AIDS. AIDS is acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, and once they have AIDS, they're in serious danger and they're life-threatening danger. And AIDS is really unique because it's only transferred in some situations. It's only transferred through sexual intercourse, during childbirth, or if someone's infected blood comes into contact with your blood. And it's also not transferred in any other situation, which is a big myth about AIDS. So it's not transferred through things like insects, kissing, sterile needles, sharing drinking water or utensils. To keep sex sacred, to save sex for marriage, and then remain faithful is telling them to love one another deeply with their whole hearts. Most HIV infections in Africa are spread by sex outside of marriage, casual sex, and infidelity. The solution is faithful love. So this sounds like a good idea, but it really is backed by statistics in the country of Uganda. Helen Epstein's book, The Invisible Cure, The West and the Fight Against AIDS, gives a good history of the Uganda AIDS crisis and the big turnaround that they had. So in 1987, almost 1 in 4 adults in Uganda had HIV, and the ABC program emerged from the president because he saw that the country was really in crisis. The entire country really became involved in the fight against AIDS. Hundreds of tiny community AIDS-based programs sprang up throughout Uganda to comfort the sick, care for orphans, warn people about the dangers of casual sex, and address the particular vulnerability of women and girls to infection. This was a program that was really run by the people, and it actually really opposed the culture of promiscuity that was kind of accepted in Africa at the time. It was accepted that teenagers may have multiple sexual partners, and even married men would have multiple partners, so it really opposed that. But it also gave the last part of the program, which is the C, use a condom as a last resort, because it recognized that some people will not want to follow the guidelines no matter what. They didn't care if they would be infected, so it said it was better for those people to use a condom and not get infected than for them to get the virus. Of the transformation, Epstein writes, in 1995, the Uganda Health Ministry reported that the HIV rate in Uganda had been falling steadily for several years. So we can take a look at these two graphs here. This first one comes from the International Studies Department of the Nazareth College, and you can see that the HIV rate really peaks right there in the middle in about 1989, and then it starts to steadily fall until 2001. It's about 8%. And then the second one comes from the World Bank, and this actually just shows the life expectancy of people in Uganda. And again, that life expectancy really begins to fall, and it hits its bottom around 1995 when a lot of people were dying of the virus. And then in the year 2000, it begins to rise again. And these really kind of show the effectiveness of the program. But there was one problem with that, because a lot of people wondered what caused this transformation. There was very little international involvement during the time that Uganda saw this transformation, so there was a lot of experts that theorized about what it was. One of the big theories they had was that HIV had hit its peak, so it just began to fall naturally. But this actually wasn't true, because in surrounding countries you had very similar HIV rates and cultures. HIV never peaked, it just continued to go up or stayed high. The second myth was that it was just increased condom use that had actually caused HIV rates to fall. But this actually was untrue as well, because in similar countries like Botswana and South Africa, they had actually, the number one goal in the fight against AIDS for them was increased condom use, and condom use had gone way up. However, the HIV rate continued to rise in the country. So that showed that really it was due to the ABC program, which emphasized abstinence as well as faithfulness. Rand L. Stoneburner and Daniel Lobier from sciencemag.org reported that there was a 60% decrease in casual sex in Uganda, which was kind of evidence that it really was due to this faithfulness campaign. Alright, yep. There seems to be clear scientific evidence that the ABC program in Uganda was very effective because it emphasized abstinence and faithfulness. This brings us to the question, what can we do to join in the fight against AIDS and HIV? Well, the first thing is just being informed. Being informed about the issue and telling others is a great way that we can kind of spread our opinion and we can talk about what was most effective in the country, and that can help to bring about policy within our own country to help them. Also, we can donate, but the caveat with that is that we have to donate very carefully, because some of the programs are promoting just mass distribution of condoms or things like that. And Hillary White from lifesitenews.org writes that there's actually some African countries like Uganda who are actually rejecting the aid of the West because they say that they don't want this mass distribution of condoms, because that's actually caused the HIV rate to go up, and they've actually had success on their own, so they really don't want the West to come in there and mess things up for them. So donate, but make sure the programs that you're donating to really have the right goals in mind, and do a little bit of research about that. And finally, what we can do is volunteer. If you have the chance to go on a trip, I would definitely encourage that. I had the chance to do it when I was a junior in high school, and it was a very rewarding experience. Alright, so to review what I went over, HIV is a virus that attacks your immune system, and once you get a disease because of HIV, then you have AIDS, and once you have AIDS, you're in a life-threatening condition. And the virus is only spread through special situations, and Uganda's ABC programs stands for abstain, be careful, and use a condom as a last resort. But it was very effective in lowering the HIV rate because of its focus on abstinence and faithfulness. And finally, to take action on this issue, be sure to stay informed. Also, donate to programs that you've done some research on. And finally, volunteer if you have the opportunity. Thank you.